What is going on YouTube fitness family? Got an amazing video for you guys today. I'm going to be ranking pretty much all of the bicep exercises that I could think of. And what do I know about building big ass biceps? I don't know, maybe just like a little bit. Just kidding, that's like all like synthol and trend. At least that's what everybody online says. But I'm gonna be telling you guys whether you've been making extreme, terrible, life-altering mistakes by choosing the wrong bicep exercises, or you guys are winners because you've been doing the S and A tier exercises that I'm gonna be going through today. So before hopping into the video, I want to go through the grading criteria that I used so it's a little easier to understand why I'm grading something, let's say S tier versus D or F tier. So, okay, number one is stimulus to fatigue ratio. So what that means is simply how much stimulus can we drive utilizing that exercises versus what's the risk profile, right? How likely are you going to get injured doing that? I don't mean just acutely in that moment doing that one set, but over time doing that exercise, maybe tendon related or disc related or just general wear and tear. What is that risk profile? So I'm always looking to maximize how much stimulus can you get versus what are the potential risks. Number two, we have the acute stimulus. So how much acute stimulus are you getting versus, let's say, an ancillary mover? So a good example of this would be, let's say, if you're doing a, like this will be an example for today. If you're doing a pull-up, basically a supinated pull-up, palms facing towards you, yes, of course, you're going to get bicep stimulus, but there's gonna be a lot of front delt, there's gonna be a bunch of lat. So how much acute stimulus are we driving with that exercise? That's very important. Number three, we have the ability to progress. So can we utilize, let's say, progressive overload? Can we make it heavier? Can we increase range of motion? Can we increase time under tension? Is there some way that we can progress this exercise in a way that we can scale it over time? Number four is maximizing hypertrophic principles. And what I mean by that is, based on the latest in science, are we able to get a really good stretch? Are we able to utilize a lot of time under tension easily? These are the things that we know are very, very efficacious for driving stimulus and reducing fatigue. So that's something I really want to look at based on that specific exercise. Number five would be setup and accessibility. I know a lot of people get on my ass like, well, in my gym, I can't pull that bench over there. I get it. I will put that in there as a caveat. If there's an exercise that's just crazy hard to set up, I will mark it down for that, just because a lot of people have limited time in the gym. I understand most people can't be spending 90, 120 minutes in the gym doing their workout, waiting for machines. So I will factor that in to this list. And the last one is barrier to entry. So what I mean by that is an exercise so hard to start or like so technical that it'd be hard for a beginner to do? So for example, like a body weight pull-up, like that's a pretty hard exercise for somebody stepping into the gym to do. So that is gonna be something I consider when grading my exercises. All right, so number one, we have to start with the barbell bicep curl. And this is just one of the most iconic exercises that you'll see done in exercise videos. You saw Arnold doing it. He had crazy big biceps. You'd be surprised I'm gonna grade this one a C. And there's a few reasons for that. Number one is a lot of times it's an ego-driven exercise. When you put weight on a bar and you're doing barbell bicep curls, a lot of times you'll see guys swinging it. Anytime you're using momentum, you're taking away from your biceps' ability to obviously perform the movement in isolation. So it's very common you'll see people perform this exercise not so well. Also, another really big point is when you really start focusing on eccentrically loading a heavy barbell bicep curl, you're gonna start getting pulled forward just due to vectors of force, gravity. So it can be really taxing on your lower back, and it tends to to basically stop people from utilizing eccentric control, which as we know is super, super beneficial for driving hypertrophy in the biceps or in any muscle group specifically. So those are the main reasons. Also, putting your hands in a fully supinated position with heavy weight, it's just gonna put a lot of pressure on the bones and joints in your forearm. So usually you want to be just slightly here and not completely supinated. So when you load a super heavy bar, I would start to, even at 18 years old, I would start to get a lot of pain through my forearms, through my elbows, performing that exercise. So something to be aware of. I would switch over to easy bar. And for that reason, I'm giving it a C. And now we're going to right into an exercise that I think rectifies a lot of these problems, which is the preacher curl. So a lot of people freak out because they're like, oh my God, I saw the guy tore both biceps doing the preacher curl. Yeah, that guy also was doing like 45s on each side and probably realistically should have been doing 25s. And if you go down to the very bottom of the movement pattern and get like a crazy stretch when you haven't conditioned yourself to that, the environment was very, very primed for him to get hurt. So basically, I think this is a step up from the barbell curl because what we're doing is now we have leverage, we have bracing. So when you sit that arm on the pad, now when we eccentrically load, our limiting factor might not be core strength or lower back, it can literally just be from the bicep. So if I were to implore you guys, really focus on a slow negative. The other great thing about a preacher curl, it does have a really nice stretch bias. So at the bottom, we get full range of motion, really stretch the biceps. So really be cognizant of utilizing a weight that you feel comfortable with. And if we can, it's an easy B grade for me. Moving on to the reverse curl, you'll see a lot of people doing reverse curls and then coming down here. This is gonna be a D grade for me. The reason being is our limiting factor is usually not the bicep. This is a tremendous, and I've talked about it so many times, one of my favorite forearm exercises, but forearms are more likely to give out than your biceps doing this movement pattern. And I never want to grade a movement pattern high that the limiting factor is not that muscle group. So if I'm doing biceps, I'm not going to do a movement where my forearms are gonna stop me from hitting my biceps as hard as they could or should be. Forearm movement, A+. Bicep movement, D for me. So moving on to the drag curl. This one is going to be my highest grade of the day so far. We're gonna give this a B+. And the reason for that is because what we're doing is drawing the elbows back, pulling, dragging right up the body and disallowing ourselves from using a lot of momentum, using a lot of ancillary movers, let's say even front delt. A lot of times when people curl heavy, they'll actually use a little momentum, even a little lat drive, and then a lot of pull through that front delt. Now, if we move that elbow back and we drag it right up the body, it's forcing us to use pretty much all bicep. You can see the shoulder basically becomes disengaged altogether. So conversely to, let's say, the forearm being the limiting factor in those reverse curls, the bicep is now 100% the limiting factor, and that's why it bumps up to a B+. The risk factor is very low. Usually this exercise will tend to be done with a lot lighter weight than, let's say, a heavier barbell curl. So the fatigue is gonna be much less, the wear and tear over time is gonna be much less. Definitely would add this to your routine if you're not currently doing it. Okay, moving on to spider curls. So this is another movement pattern where you're gonna use a lot lighter weight, but you're putting your biceps on an island and it completely disallows any use of momentum. And usually will make biceps the limiting factor of the exercise as well. So when you are on that incline bench, you also get the benefit, if you set it up correctly, of getting a huge stretch at the bottom of the rep, and then just an immense amount of peak contraction. Another tip, guys, go lighter on this. If you try to go heavy, you're gonna start to lift the elbows, and it's going to take the emphasis out of the bicep and into the front delt. So what you wanna do is keep those elbows down and back, curl, but keeping that emphasis in the bicep and not raising up towards the forehead. This is another just great way to provide a new stimulus. I always tell people, like, yes, the basics are great, but once you've been lifting for 5, 10, 15, and like me, let's say 18 plus years, you need to, for two reasons, have novel stimulus. Number one is that without novel stimulus, you're probably not inducing growth. If you're doing the same 7 exercises for upper body for 10 years, like there's only so much you can progressively overload. And number two is just like the enjoyment factor. When you like learn a new movement pattern and you can start to perfect it and hone it in, it's a very fun way to make the gym feel fresh. So I would highly recommend not too much, but adding novelty to your routine, because it's gonna induce more growth, but it's also going to make you look forward to the gym and try new things. All right, next we have, moving on to the dumbbell work, we have hammer curls. I think these are a tremendous exercise, usually just very easy to learn. The argument being most of the time that you're gonna get more width from doing a hammer curl. I think it's obviously not gonna be as exposed the bicep as much as a supinated position, meaning palm towards here, but it does allow for a lot of times if, let's say, grip strength or forearm strength is your limiting factor for a supination curl, by doing hammer and pushing your hand towards the top of the dumbbell, it can take that stress out of the forearm and grip strength and push it right into the bicep. Obviously the range of motion is not gonna be quite as much as if you were to do, let's say, even an incline bench supinated curl or standing supinated curl, but for beginners, tremendous exercise, even for advanced lifters, as long as you're not ego lifting and swinging the hell out of it. I think it's definitely something you should have in your repertoire. You can do it just about any gym. It's been a long time since I've been to any gym without dumbbells. Every gym has dumbbells, so going down to that accessibility, it's very easy to scale. So for those reasons, I have to give hammer curls at least a B. The limitations are, obviously, you can use momentum. A lot of times people will ego lift with this. They will lift the elbow, taking the emphasis out of the bicep and putting it in the front delt. But if you can limit those mistakes, this can go all the way up to an A grade, but I just see that so often. That's why I'm giving it a B. All right, standing supinated curls. I'm also gonna be giving this a B for those same reasons. I think it's a tremendous exercise, especially like you can do it in any gym. You can get full range of motion, but same thing. The limitations are momentum. A lot of times people lift their elbow. A lot of people want to look cool and you know, curl the 50s when they should probably be curling the 30s with good form. So for those reasons, again, a B for that. Concentration curls. This is going to go up to an A. So the reason for this is because now you're providing leverage again. So you're providing a stable platform in which you can place your tricep and you can get a very, very good stretch, very good peak contraction. Can't use momentum, and you see in my form video that I filmed for this, you see I almost lean back, and the reason for that is to expose the bicep even more to stretch, more range of motion, and actually driving more stimulus in that stretch position is going to drive more hypertrophy. So this one jumps up to an A grade for me. I think it's something you should definitely add in if you're not doing it currently. All right, incline dumbbell iso curls. Everybody knows I love this exercise. When you lean back on that incline bench, you get a tremendous amount of stretch. You eliminate any momentum and you just put your biceps on such an island. It's great for drop setting. You can do partials on this. It's an S tier exercise for me through and through. You have an improved angle as compared to, let's say, a standing curl as well, just because you get a lot more force in that stretch position. And then obviously in that contracted position, by leaning back, you're putting it on island. It disallows you from kind of using that momentum and also pushing up and taking over that front delt. So you'll see this in a lot of my videos utilizing the incline bench curl, and that's gonna be S tier for me. All right, Zottoman curls. Man, oh man, this is gonna be D tier for me. It's the same time you're like twisting dumbbells, you're trying to like hit forearms and biceps at the same time. Anytime you'll see, like, you taught me talking about like any of those movement patterns where you're like, okay, we're gonna take these dumbbells and we're gonna do like a fucking push up on the floor, and then you're gonna do a squat and then an overhead fucking press. Like, don't fucking do that shit, dude. Unless you're like in a group class trying to burn calories, get your heart rate up. You should never pick a movement where like one thing is much stronger than the other. Like, for example, like if you do like a squat to press, like your squat is gonna be so much stronger holding those dumbbells than your press. So like you're limiting your squat by doing the press. It's just a fucking wreck. So for these, when you come up and then you twist the dumbbells and go down the other way, I mean, might as well just do some bicep and then do a reverse curl for forearms and just stop fucking wasting your time. Okay, Scott curls where you're on the incline bench. This is a tremendous exercise where you can get a lot of stretch. The only limitation is the dumbbell hitting the bench usually stop you from getting full range of motion, and that's why I'm giving it a B- as opposed to an A. I think the incline dumbbell dual, that S tier exercise solves that problem in this one. It'll hit the bench before you get full ROM, and for that reason, I can't give it as high. It's super easy, super accessible. Every gym has a bench. A lot of times people won't ego lift with this, so that's why it does get the grade it does, at least a B, but the limited range of motion is gonna be where it stops me from giving it an A or S tier. All right, standing bar cable curls. This is gonna be a B tier exercise for me. I think it's a staple. I think it's a very easy to exercise to perform. Same limitations as the barbell in the sense of like imbalanced. That's why it's a B instead of an A. I think if you can kind of lean back and have really good form, I think it can get up to an A. But the next exercise, the cable drag curl, that's gonna be an A for me. This is one I do all the time. But the way you pull it back towards the body and then up, oh my God, the contraction is absolutely nuts. It disallows you from using momentum, just like the same thing with the barbell drag curl. So for me, this is another A tier exercise. I actually think I like it a little bit more than the barbell, just because you have a more even force curve with the cable, but both are pretty much synonymous for me. Moving on to the line curl, this is an A grade for me. It kind of obviously rectifies the problems you have with a standing barbell curl. Completely disallows you from using momentum. As long as you have your legs flat on the floor, you can get the full range of motion. You could also do this on like a seated row. So if you lie back on a seated row, if you don't want to lie on the floor, that's also an option as well. Very accessible, very easy, almost zero injury risk. You can use an easy bar as well if that's your preference. But for me, for all those reasons, great contraction bias when you're at the top of the rep. As opposed to, let's say, a standing barbell curl where you're getting pulled forward. If you're lying all the way back, you're here, you can hold that without feeling you need to brace to your core or your lower back. So tremendous exercise, A grade for me. All right, incline bench, single arm cable curl. With this, you don't have to worry about the limited range of motion because the handle's so small, so you can reach for full range of motion. I recommend standing sideways like that, so you can get a little bit more isolation to the bicep and even a little more stretch by turning away from the movement pattern. And for those reasons, crazy peak contraction bias, it's going to get a A grade for me. And then an incline bench curl where we're gonna face the bench away, and that's gonna be a stretch bias. And what I mean by that is you are going to get more of the emphasis in the stretch position than the contracted position, the way the bench is set up. And anytime that you're going to get a stretch bias, but also really good contraction bias, which this exercise does, because that vector of force is coming from down and back behind you, this is gonna be an S tier for me. There's very little injury risk. It is extremely efficacious in the sense of you can use a lot of time under tension. You can utilize progressive overload very easily. The increments on the cables allow for it. And it has amazing stretch. I would highly recommend pausing in the stretch. So if you come back, pause in that stretch before digging up and don't explode. Pull consciously through the biceps. Trust me on this, throw in some partials at the end of the set, absolutely murderous. It's a staple for me. All right, now we're gonna flip the bench around and do an incline bench curl with a contraction bias. What I mean by that is now the vector of force is coming, same position, but now you flip the bench around. So you don't have hardly any basically force in the stretch position. When you come up to the top, the contracted position, there's a ton of force. So, as we know, stretch bias is always going to be king, and I think, but I think this exercise is also really, really good because you have pretty much unlimited bracing. You can't use momentum, and for that reason, it's going to have an A grade for me. All right, let's get to chin-ups. So that's a fucking D for me, guys. I absolutely hate chin-ups. I think it's like such a throwaway exercise. Unless you have the assisted chin-ups, then it'll jump to like a C grade for me. Basically, this means supinated grip. There's so many things that are wrong with this. I'm gonna get so much hate in the comments. I don't care. Literally, like, it's terribly hard for beginners. If you throw a band on there, it makes it harder. It makes it easier in the point where you actually want to be hardest, where in the stretch position, where it makes it basically not any easier at the top of the rep, where you're actually gonna be contracting, but in the sense of like, it really is not gonna make it easier for a beginner to perform the exercise. It also has a lot of ancillary movers. You can take over with your lats, your front delts, your forearms can tend to give out on something like this. So if you want to grow your biceps, sure. If all you have at your house is a freaking chin-up bar, by all means, do a ton of chin-ups and you might have slightly bigger biceps. But if you have a full-scale commercial gym, this is not the exercise I'd be doing to grow my biceps, and that's just personal preference. All right, heavy band barbell curl. This is one that I didn't come up with, but I don't see anybody else doing it. I think it's a really cool meeting of fixed weight, which would be the bar. So I use a lighter bar, like 30, 40 pounds with a heavy band. And so you get the benefit of the fixed bar with also just crazy amounts of peak contraction bias with the heavy band. This is something I've been doing for years, and it's like, I am so sore after I do it. I think it just is because that it's such a novel stimulus as compared to, let's say, traditional, let's say, force curve that's provided by a cable or a barbell. So I would try it out. It's pretty safe because it gets heaviest at the top when you're contracting, and it doesn't put that much tax on, let's say, your lower back, because if you were to do a super heavy barbell curl with just strict weight, it seems like it would take a long time to set up. If you like literally throw a loop band around something, toss it around the bar, it takes like 20 seconds to set up. So I can't really say the setup time is gonna be egregious. So for that reason, it's an A grade for me. And that's gonna bring us to the end. I think I'm gonna throw on like a machine curl. I mean, it's so hard to grade that though, because there's so many good machine curls. There's so many terrible machine curls. So I don't really want to do that, because I don't want to give that, let's say, an A grade. Then you guys are walking in the gym like, oh, Eric said like the machine curls are sick, but like you might have like the worst machine curl in existence, and then you're like sitting there using it week after week, and you're like, dude, Eric's a piece of shit. He made me do this stupid ass machine over and over again. So I hope you guys love this video. I hope you guys like these grading videos. It took me a lot of time to film all those exercises. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of the grades down below. I won't be offended. Everybody's got an opinion, is entitled to it. I love you guys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Make sure to hit up HCLT for the best subs in the game. I'm currently sipping on, I think this is it. Yeah, Perry-Lite. This sour gummy worm is absolutely bomb. So if you need electrolytes plus EAAs, that should be your go-to. But I love you guys, and I will see you on the next video.